Now, Wisconsin's Dane County Board is considering an 18-month moratorium on what it calls hyperscale data centers. It's the AI everywhere boom, right? So no applications they're considering, no zoning permits, no siting in the county, which includes the state capital of Madison. For much more on this, joining me is the Center Square's John Stief. John, thank you for joining us on today's episode. It seems that Wisconsin is kind of going the way that many other states, including Washington State, where I live, are kind of putting the brakes on, going, we moved ahead with data centers, we gave them tax breaks, but maybe we've gone too far.
Right. And one thing that we know about these data centers is that they're not really popular with the general public. 70% of people say the benefits don't outweigh the risks of having one near you. So a lot of the towns in Wisconsin and counties are now considering, hey, maybe we should take a step back and think about these things, think about zoning, think about whether we want to continue to give these kind of tax breaks to these large data centers where, yeah, there's a lot of construction jobs that come along with them. But once they open, it's a lot of servers in there and there's not a ton of employees. So they are kind of singling out the hyperscale ones, which is what they call any data center that has 5,000 servers or 10,000 square feet. And they're looking at saying, hey, we're not going to accept anymore. We're not going to start any new process for the next 18 months while we kind of figure out better all the long-term issues or positives that come with these things.
It's interesting you mentioned the jobs picture because in Washington State, there's been a lot of discussion about that. Oh, it's going to be great for the economy. We high paying, construction jobs and then the engineers that get to work there. But you just said that once the main construction's done, there aren't a lot of tech guys left behind to, make sure all the servers are working properly. That's interesting. I don't think there's been a lot of discussion of that.
And there's so many complex issues with these, like the fact that they put them in tax increment districts so many times. And so you're giving all the extra property taxes on these back to the company, and you're saying, okay, in 30 years, then we'll start collecting that increment, that extra value. But it's like, if you think about it, 30 years ago, what technology looked like, and 30 years from now, what technology is going to look like. Well, these data centers in this form are not going to exist the same way in 30 years, it doesn't seem like, because technology moves fast. And that's a big part of this. Like, hey, we do need this technology. We can't fall behind other countries in terms of AI because of this. But how do you appropriately do it? What's the right level of incentive to give to these projects? Because usually the level of incentive for something like this that you're seeing is something that has a lot of long-term employment, not just the temporary, 3 or 4 years when you're building up the project, and then you get into, are we going to tax the electricity? Are we going to tax when they buy new servers and they put them in there? Is there going to be property tax on what you're building? All those things are undecided, and it all came back everyone so quickly that they just didn't really think about the long-term impacts of these things. And now there's a lot of places like Dane County that want to just take a step back. Like, hey, let's have an actual plan for this before we start approving all these things.
Well, and in Washington this year, they actually got rid of some of those tax breaks for some of the data centers and then said, okay, you new guys can still come in. We've maybe permitted it, but you're going to create your own power. So you're not going to suck off the grid so that everybody else, is maybe having to have blackouts or that sort of a thing. Is the drain on the grid from these massive data centers something that's been an issue in Wisconsin as well?
Oh, it's a huge issue because there's 4 main large projects in the state. And then when they talk about the energy use, it's like one of the larger projects in Fort Washington. Hey, we're going to use as much electricity there as the entire city of Los Angeles.
Wow.
Like, crazy amount. And you talk about the tax breaks for these, like the tax breaks on electricity, on sales tax. Those laws in a lot of states were created before the hyperscale data centers that we're talking about. Ohio just passed, the governor decided to stop the sales tax breaks there because they were 10 times more than what was expected. $1.5 billion worth of tax breaks instead of, 150 million. It's just driven up so fast, all the money that's involved in these things, that the tax breaks have gotten out of control. Wisconsin had the same thing, $1.5 billion worth of breaks for large data centers.
So that's a lot of money then not coming into state coffers in Wisconsin and elsewhere. But you're right, the technology, it's all happened so fast. And nobody wants to be the state that got left behind in this, big AI boom. We got to get out in front of this thing. So come to our state. We'll give you, and then they go, wait a minute, we thought we were only going to lose out on about $100 million. We're losing out on 10 times that. So you're right. Everybody's kind of having to put the brakes on this. But at the same time, there are states luring the states that are kind of putting the brakes on, right? So it's a tough situation for lawmakers. I wouldn't want to make those decisions.
Right. I think that there's about 38 states right now that give the tax break for sales tax on purchases of construction materials at these sites. And you're seeing, last year, Minnesota decided to take away the sales tax on just the initial construction, and other states are considering that same thing. But there's a lot of different levels of it. And when you consider the electricity cost, that's one of the biggest ones, the sales tax on electricity that comes along with it.
Oh, and I don't know what you're paying on your power bill there, but in Washington state, our power bills just went up 30%, 30%. And a lot of it is because of, some of the drain on the system. And then, of course, we've got environmental concerns, but that's a whole nother conversation we can dive into. John, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation and you joining us on today's episode. So readers can check out the story on the Center Square, Wisconsin page. Now, as John just mentioned, there are other states making moves, even just this week, to change their approach to all these data centers. He mentioned Ohio, and that is where this week Governor Mike DeWine paused any new sales and use tax exemptions for data centers as that state legislature studies the impact on this rapidly growing industry. Ohio currently has 205 data centers, according to Data Center Map, a company that does some of the research. But critics have said, they're being overrun by the demand of these data centers, threatening to, as we were just discussing with John, overrun the grid and water supplies in the state, and then, of course, tax away this valuable revenue from the state and local communities. And also, the Virginia Board of Supervisors for Hanover County voted this week to reject a proposed 427-acre data center campus. That proposed mega project would have brought 5 data center buildings and up to 3 substations, hundreds of megawatts of electric demand for the eastern part of that Virginia county. It was interesting. One resident compared the county's growing data center debate to Paul Revere's warning during the American Revolution, telling supervisors they should hear the phrase, "The data centers are coming, the data centers are coming," same way the colonists announced when the British were coming. So interesting, this data center resistance or, rush to claw back some of those tax breaks that are, not coming into state coffers. This is going to be an evolving conversation in the days and weeks and months to come, and one we promised to stay on top of.